following on from Europe, like I did a piece, we call them on Friday, just about what's kind of happening now, this new generation of players and the potential of what could be coming down the tracks. Like I don't know, hopefully listeners by now, if you've read it, it's obviously the column from Friday, just it was along the lines of, how the new generation of League of Ireland players could earn millions, and I kind of use Sean Gannon as a bit of a reference. The next Sean Gannon.
The next Sean Gannon will comfortably be a millionaire was the line.
Yeah,
that's the line that catches. I would never think Sean Gannon and millionaire in the same sentence. Knowing Gano, I know Gano fairly well. He's an absolutely brilliant fella, but certainly doesn't have the airs and graces of a millionaire. But that's for sure.
But I was going through. I don't know what because when I was coming back in the car from Windsor Park when Shells got through, and I was just going through a thing, and I was like going through a few other players. This is talking about the bonuses. This is basically the idea for the piece came just in the back of what Sean Boyd was talking about. The fact that like he got engaged, he was talking about it with his wife, his fiance, about what he could potentially earn if he get through a couple of rounds, and she's like, "Oh, that would pay for the wedding." Do you know what I mean? And she's already got to spend. But even the fact that Sean Boyd referenced Sean Gannon, that Gannon obviously had spoken to the lads, because obviously a couple of campaigns with Dundalk in the Europa League, and also he had he had one campaign, didn't he? He had the one campaign with Rovers in the Conference League when wasn't their first one under Stephen Bradley. I was just going through some of the figures, and then you make a few calls on it, and you begin to realise that with the Conference League and the rise in what's happening with some of the wages and stuff, that this is what could potentially be coming down the tracks.
Yeah, and listen, fair play to you, is a serious level of detail on it. So just to kind of skirt into it, so I'm jumping to a part here straight away. So you might give us an idea of how you've come up with this, right? So it is now feasible to consider that players from the three categories who spend at least 10 years at the top level and qualify for European League phases. So category 3 you have down as 750 grand. So these are the poor minions down at the bottom who are only earning 750,000.
These are the poor minions who are still playing at the top clubs and are playing regularly. Do you know what I mean? But they're not the, you know what I mean? Yeah.
Yeah. Category 2, 1.25 K, and category 3, 1.75 million. Sorry, I said thousand there the last time, I think. Where are these numbers generating from, or where are you getting this from? Is that real? That seems huge to me.
Yeah, so obviously everyone knows the crack, don't they, in terms of you hear figures get bandied about X amount of X player gets this money, blah blah blah. So that's why when I got back from Belfast the other night, I was just like, well, do what you do, just rang around with a couple of different people, just to get a sense who are actually, and this is very much in the case of, obviously it was tying in with Europe. This is at the moment the clubs who are competing in Europe and where the money is gone. And as it was expressed to me, was that at those clubs who are challenging for Europe, this is where that pay scale is at. That, like, I would say at the moment, the majority of those players are in the 50 grand bracket. Like, it's not like so basically, as you were saying there, like 50 grand a year, the majority of players would be earning. Like, went through a couple of details, like, for this as well. Little things, and it's a reminder, like, it's just, this is a kind of a stark reminder of where things are still at. So it was only last week that the PFAI got the minimum wage up from 430 to 450. The average wage last year, the last couple of years, was around the €700 a week mark. The information they're getting now is that's $890 a week. So, like, that's still the average of where we're at.
A significant jump.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Well, that's what I'm saying. It's a big jump if you think about it.
I assume we're talking gross here. When you're saying 50,
yeah.
Sorry.
So
So basically, you're looking at just shy of $1,000 a week, basically, for those that you're putting in the 50K category.
Yeah, and as it was expressed to me, at the moment, that's where you would have the bulk be 50 and maybe a little bit above that, and then obviously you can have your bonuses. Then there's this category 2, which I referenced, which would be around close to 100 grand mark. They'd be a few players who, like, again, who you could tell difference makers in teams, players who maybe have come into the league maybe recently, possibly coming in and will be on good contracts. And then at the top end, and it's referenced in it, it's a very few. Like, I wouldn't even say you need to count these players on one hand. That would be on around 150 grand per year. Now, I was going off the basis, and this is what obviously when you make another couple of calls, because you get that and you're like, wait, that's interesting. And then as it was like, yeah, that you're not a million miles off the mark there. Do you know what I mean? Like, you're still going to be an element of you're not going to get, which what 100% what people are earning, and that's only right because it's still a professional business. I'm not expecting to be told, Jesus, this is how much they're paying in PAYE. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, well, I just to give you, and again, to be fair to people, I'm not going to name names here or anything, right? But so it's 2020, is it 2020, 2021, thereabouts since I was with Dundalk. And I suppose I would have been doing a lot of the administration is probably not the correct word, but I would have been doing a lot of the contract stuff at the time when I was there in the role that I was in. And I can tell you with Dundalk having been, I would have thought, pretty much the highest payers in the league at the time, thereabouts anyway.
But I remember Bill saying he had like a higher budget than anyone by a distance.
Yeah, listen, the top earner at Dundalk was on 1,800 quid a week.
Right.
So if we're gone to 3K in the space of 4 years, that is fairly significant. Now, as has been probably detailed in one or two places, he did then sign one player on an utterly ridiculous contract that I think is still may even be undergoing legal proceedings at the moment. So we won't go too much into that. But as a basic wage for somebody who was there from the entire season, started a negotiation from the start of the season, 1,800 now. Again, your bits and bobs of bonuses, and that whole bonuses area, by the way, David, is that is not smooth sailing in clubs, let me tell you. It really isn't. I think we weren't at player strike stage, but there was quite a bit of disharmony in the Dundalk camp that season, that we were maybe 2-3 games into the campaign, and still there was still no agreement in place in terms of what the European bonus structure was going to look like. You'd be looking at, I suppose.
And would that be because it wasn't expected? Do you know what I mean? Whereas now, I think.
Yeah, maybe a little bit, and then also there would have been feeling maybe that Bill was dragging his feet in terms of agreeing things. Like you'd had fairly well experienced guys there in terms of, you look at what Gary Rogers has gone on to do since. Obviously, he'd be fairly clued in around the whole money side of things. Brian Gartland, they would have been kind of the two main men doing the talking on behalf of the group. But there can be you think about it, an agent normally negotiates your individual contract. But when it comes to the European bonuses, it's usually the team. Yeah, exactly. It's 2 or 3 representative of the team. So you have this very, very strange dynamic where the owners of the club and the players are directly negotiating finances. That's the whole reason for having agents, is to stop that actually happen. But yet it does happen in these circumstances. And then, it's like when a transfer is agreed with a player going elsewhere, are you willing to gamble and take less at the moment for the chance of more as their career progresses? Same applies here with a group of players. Like, the players need to sit down and decide, right, do we want this as a set amount, or are we willing to take less as a set amount, but back ourselves to go a little bit further in it, and then look for big bonuses if we get further down the track, all of that kind of stuff. So that all feeds into it a little bit as well. But just going back to the basic. And as I say, taking that 1,800 has been the highest earner in Dundalk. It's a fairly significant increase. And I would have said there was maybe only 3 at Dundalk over 1,500 at the time.
Well, what I would say is as well is that 1,800, that would still be one of the higher earners now. That's what I'm saying in terms of the bulk. Do you know what I mean? It's not like.
Yeah.
And I think hopefully it was laid out even in the piece. I wasn't going to make the point of, well, there's loads of players now earning, say, 150 or even 100 grand. Like, it wasn't making the point that loads of them are touching, but there is players there who are now getting that. That's why I use the Sean Gannon reference more so, because obviously he's gonna, if he plays, and obviously now Shells are guaranteed to play Carabag on Wednesday in the next round of the Champions League, and then because of the Champions path, they're going to get into the playoff of the Conference League guaranteed. Like, I use the Sean Gannon reference and a player like him as that reference, because if you have that consistency over that length of time, and you have that kind of growth now in earnings, that is the potential for what you can have. And if you're able to keep that player, that caliber of player, and stay here, and the European money that is now on offer and the bonuses, like it's referenced in the piece, you're talking around 20% of prize money that's split amongst the players. So as it was again detailed to me, if you look at say Shamrock Rovers over the last couple of years, you can kind of work out well what, like what you're saying there, it would have been a base that's guaranteed amongst the squad of what they're going to get on that bonus. And then there is the player pool section where you say, well, also some of that money then goes on performances, goes on. Obviously, you get extra bonus. Like it's 400 in the Conference League. It's like 400 grand. I think it is 400 grand. I think for a win, and that the club get, and then it's like 100 and I think it's 100 and something for a draw, 117 around for a draw. Rovers obviously also made it into the knockout stages, so they ended up as a club earning just over 6 million. You split that by 20% amongst the players. Like that's a good L. It's a good L chunk. And the figures I was using was not even basing it on that you're going to always qualify through, and you're not going to qualify every year for Europe. No one was kind of saying that, but I was being maybe conservative just on the basis of what Rovers have done over the last little while. That if the best team or if the best players are qualifying every other year for Europe with that new system, with the Champions Path, and with also the as I was saying, obviously with the Conference League.
But is there
potential to get that bonus is going to come? Like it's especially when you see where the league is going. Do you know what I mean? In terms of like just the progress that seems to be happening. You know, like I was genuinely, and I was using the figures that are happening, that are there now at the moment. Not if inflation stuff was to rise. I added it in obviously about the sports person's tax relief.
I was just going to say, I was just going to come to that you might mention a bit on that as well.
Yeah,
so but explain how that works.
And I did have that afterwards because I was like, that's another element that's going to be very important to keep them, to help and keep players here in terms, well, players who maybe might have offers to go to a certain level elsewhere, and they look at it and they might earn a bit more in the short term over a smaller period of time. But this sports person's tax relief, and it's not a new thing, but it was during the course of different discussions with people when I was writing the column after the Thursday game in Windsor, or Wednesday, yeah. Just that, like, how it basically works is for professional sports people, it's not just footballers. There's a list on the revenue website. You go through it. You can pick like 10 of your best 14 years as a sports person based living in the country, and you can claim back tax-free 40% of the tax you've paid in those 10 highest years. So, like, if that's something now, when obviously you mentioned there about agents, but players now getting advised, and I know something getting advised. If you know that you're at a high level now as a professional in this country, that you can be challenging to qualify and play in groups like league phase of European football, and that's gonna provide you with a steady income and living on a high level of living over what's hopefully a 10-year minimum 10, again using the Sean Gannon metric for this, whatever, but you're gonna earn a good level of money basic in that career. But then at the end of it, you're gonna come out with a high 6-figure sum as effectively more money for your pension, effectively, or just like a bit of a nest egg, and that's something now that I think players, with the advice that's there in the professionals in the league, they're now realizing, and they're like, well, like, listen, I think we're far away from a point of view where players will be turning down more lucrative moves and to better themselves in a higher league where they'll stay here just for that. But I'm talking about the players at a high caliber who are going to be capable of playing and qualifying for European competition and staying, who are still going to be the ones to stay here. That's what's going to drive, I think, more that growth as well. I would say, just going off what some of these figures are at the moment.
So the big question for me here is this sustainable? Like, is this an article that could have been wrote in the late 1990s, early 2000s? That look at the money that they're on, and if this continues, here's their potential earnings. And as we know, a couple of seasons later, it was all gone up in smoke, really, pretty much. Is this built on stronger foundations this time round, do you believe?
Well, it's still built on like the majority of football clubs around the world, and this was even something that was referenced in some of the kind of the chat after the article went up. still built on obviously on clubs having their losses backed by largely whether if it's benefactor or obviously the club. Do you know what I mean? That's just where
And
professional football
even the clubs that
at.
are even the clubs that are qualifying for
Well,
Europe on a
look
regular
at
basis, are we still saying,
if you go back to Rovers when
yeah,
before Rovers qualified season before last, like they obviously had made, I can't remember the exact figure now, but they had obviously made a loss and were in the red before that. And then the European money, some of the European money that they would have got them out of that, you know. And even now, if you look at Hughes and Shelbourne, because obviously Shells have obviously made they're guaranteed now a minimum, I think it's 1.7 million for this run just of qualifiers. If they qualify for, let's say, worst case scenario, the Conference League, they're going to earn just over 3 million. Like I referenced this in a piece in the preview of the second leg of the Shells Linfield game. In the last 3 years, Shells have made an accumulated loss of over 3 million. So if they qualify for, and listen, but this is something that the club have been upfront with, where they said like they're not able to continually lose €1 million a year. So like it's sustainable to the point where obviously certain clubs are able to have those backers who are willing to actually invest and go for this success. Do you know what I mean?
Invest is the wrong word there by the sounds of things.
But no, but that's it. But let's be honest, in football, no, who invests in football and actually makes money? Do you know what I mean? Like that is just the nature. Do you know, and it's interesting because we're talking about this, like, and even the figures. These are not huge figures in the grand scheme of football. Do you know what I mean? It's just we are coming from a base in the League of Ireland where like, this is the first year of a fully professional league where every single team in the league is quote unquote morning train. The traditional thing you would expect, the traditional kind of description of professional football. This is only all like starting. So like not starting,
so you know what I mean? How like again, not to veer off topic, right? But listening to what you're saying there, right? And based on what, money coming from Europe for the last couple of seasons, or money coming from men with deep pockets, how are we looking at a League of Ireland table where Bohemians are second? Because they have neither.
Well, no, but then look at, well, again, this goes back to a column we wrote even on Balls the week of the whole Oasis jersey stuff. I don't know if you managed to see it, like Bowes, and I mentioned this, Bowes are, and it was just the headline of the article, are like a financial monster in what the League of Ireland is because of their commercial revenue. Like again, like it's mad some of the numbers that have been going around in like the figures. Remember what was it? It was like at one point they were selling maybe over €100 jerseys, away jerseys in a season, and now some of those jerseys they're selling over 30,000.
Yeah,
do you know what I mean? Like their revenues have skyrocketed. That's where like and Bowes would be. I don't think Bowes would have a player maybe who would be quite at that say 150 grand a year model, but I would say they have a couple of players who will be closer to the middle bracket in that. And Europe is a big. That's why like they're qualifying for Europe. They're looking to qualify for Europe, and it's going to be extremely difficult. Some teams are probably going to be better off. We had the cup this weekend. There was no shocks. Some teams are going to be almost better off trying to qualify for Europe through
the FAI Cup.
Through the cup because
see there you are. Bill knew what he was at all those years ago. Every single Dundalk player, without ever asking for it, had wrote into their contract that they'd get a €5,000 bonus if they scored the winner in the FAI Cup final.
Really? Yeah. Did they?
It was just one of the most obscure things you'll ever see. I think Bill had this fanciful notion about the FAI Cup being the biggest thing in the League of Ireland, and that was actually bigger than winning the league. And they all had this little bonus built in that if they scored a winner in the FAI Cup,
it's definitely getting the FAI
Bill
Cup.
knew what he was at.
Yeah, and I think the third round draw is going to be. Listen, Bill his legend lives on in the League of Ireland, but it ties in with even with the cup, ties in with what's happened in Europe, and this was in the piece that I wrote on Friday. With obviously the coefficient has steadily risen over the last few years from obviously clubs doing better, and it basically means that if you win the cup this year, you are going into the Europa League qualifiers, not the Conference League. And because you're going into Europa League qualifiers, it means you're guaranteed to drop in for at least one round if you were to lose your fourth round game in the Europa League into the Conference League. So that was going to provide you with about 700 grand in European prize money. But also, this also kind of just ties in as well. And you're saying there about it being sustainable. And this was what came back to me, even just from speaking to different people. Like, it's going to be the players, it's going to be the teams who are winning the league, especially over the last while, who have the best chance of getting into the groups, the league phase of European football, because of where the champions path is at. Like we see it now with, say, Pats, and I'll be honest, like they had I did a report off a stream for the second leg against Hegelman, and they absolutely are such. I wasn't expecting to be as comfortable for them, because I thought Hegelman might at home put it up to them, but Pats blew them away, absolutely blew them away. But unless, like, they still have to go through, and obviously they play again this week, and they're at home in the first leg this week against Kalju from Estonia. They'll, if they were to get through that round, I think potentially they might, they're obviously lower in the coefficient. Then they'll find out later on this afternoon who they're going to be playing if they can get through in the next round. But then they get through that round, and then there's a playoff round, and that's obviously last year with Pats. They nearly made it. They would have been the first Irish team to do it, to qualify for the league phase by not being the league champions that season. And then eventually they came up against Istanbul, Başakşehir, and so they're financially on a different level. And it was still a tight, like, it wasn't a draw in the first leg and then beaten away from home. But they're comfortably beaten, I would say.
Yeah, I suppose
that's where this thing of, it's going to be the top players. It's going to be the ones at the moment, as is, who are continually winning the league. And if it's the players who potentially move around a little bit, and that's why I even went with, maybe if you win the league, if you qualify and win, if you qualify for Europe in half of your seasons, say 10, 11 years in the league, because you're not going to win the league every year.
But this is what I'm asking is, are clubs responsible enough to base their financial planning on the fact that even though they expect to qualify for Europe, they may not qualify for Europe? So if you take Shelbourne and Pats at the moment, right, and let's say both teams have significantly increased their budget, right? So are they increasing their budget based on the fact that they are in Europe this year and are going to make money? Or is there an element of them increasing their budget? Because we keep hearing the phrase multi-year deals, okay? So it's all well and good, you have the money for the money generated from the upcoming European campaign, but I'd imagine you're going to plow through that pretty quickly. So therefore, are they striking some of these deals on the presumption that they will be in Europe for, next year and the year after and the year after? Because as we know, at the moment, if you look at the table at the moment, neither Shells nor Pats are qualifying for Europe next year. Now, I would have thought that could potentially have,
be huge, like
scary enough repercussions.
Well, what is it, isn't it? As it's always said, 40% of the clubs in the league will qualify for Europe every year. That's because that's just the nature of it, where it's like you've obviously got the top 3 cup winners or the top 4, depending on how it goes.
Well, I would have said at the start of the year that 4 teams would have had an expectation to qualify for Europe, and I would have said those 4 were Shamrock Rovers, Derry, Shelbourne, and St. Pat's.
Yeah,
and I would have said that Bohemians would have fancied their chances of qualifying for Europe without having had an expectation. And budgets, to the best of my experiences, budgets are quite often drawn up on what has happened the previous year, but a reasonable expectation for the year coming as well. And Drogheda obviously are the ones who are really rocking things here, in that they're not supposed to be in the picture, and they are in the picture, and they weren't supposed to be in the picture last year, and they obviously took one of the European spots last year as well. But if I'm Pats or I'm Shells, I find it hard to believe that some of their recent signings weren't based on an expectation that they will again be in Europe. Now, obviously, both still have plenty of time to still qualify for Europe. But if they didn't, what I want to hear is that if they don't qualify for Europe, it's not a major problem.
Well, this comes back in, because the whole point of whether it's sustainable and our clubs being, like, careful. I'll be honest, that wasn't the purpose of my column saying our clubs being diligent. You would think surely they are. Like, we all know in contracts, like if you're signing a player, we see it with the biggest clubs in the world. We see it with Manchester United. Like, Manchester United's players had like a 30% reduction in their wages because they didn't qualify for Europe or the Champions League. So I would imagine that, just like there's bonuses there, that if you are signing at that level and that's where you're challenging for, and your aim is to qualify for Europe, and the players don't deliver it, that there could be potentially a reduction in a standard wage, or standard, you know what I mean? The basic wage could be hit if the players don't actually meet the targets that are set for them. But again, because you're still talking from a low enough base in terms of salary, I don't know if that actually is the case, because clubs and players, because it is so competitive to sign players, you could have a case where a club like, well, actually we can't risk having maybe in a contract that if you don't qualify for Europe, that your basic wage is hit, because another club will come in and offer you a bit more money because there is that rivalry, and because we're not talking youth sums. This is the thing at the moment. We're still not talking as if like this isn't like the top level. Do you know what I mean? It's not like we're not even talking here about top end of League One of where we're at with money for these players. It is still very highly incentivized to go and do. That's where you mentioned there about Drogheda United and what's happening in the league. That's where the competitiveness that's going to be another element to what's driving what's happening in the league. You go back a few years ago, we didn't even have, even going back to Dundalk, we didn't even have what was happening now, where a lot of grounds are actually getting sold out. Like Drogheda United and what's happening at Drogheda United. Drogheda United are probably one of the most vibrant fan cultures in the league. Do you know what I mean? That's not because the club were taken over by Trivella and money was getting pumped in and they were having success. Like that's something, and again, wrote about this in the column even only another couple of weeks ago, just because it all interlinks about what's happening around the league, is that stuff is happening from a fan point of view and an attendance point of view that I think is giving clubs a bit more confidence to say, well, do you know, here, like there is, like, we can push the bottle a little bit because the gates are there. And the gates are there at clubs who aren't winning every single week, but are competing. And that's
and you have the greater overall money from UEFA. Am I right in saying, regardless of whether they qualify for Europe or not? Did we discuss that previously?
Participation stuff, like I haven't got those figures to hand, but I know that comes in like 2 tranches as well, where you would have got that just before the season started, money came in, and but that's actually something I can look into again for even just reference it in the piece later on this week, detailing that. But I just think overall, I don't think it's, and I hope I'm right in saying this.
Yeah.
But I think a lot more of the not the so much, I don't think ambition is the right word, but partly ambition and a little bit of risk that is being taken, because you have to in football, you have to like push it out a little bit. You can't not like once it's within reason, I think, is because they see, well, actually, like it is on a bit more solid ground. It's not as if they're chasing the success to try and grab people into the ground. Do you know what I mean? Like they're chasing success and they're being roared on by a few thousand people every week now. And that gives them a little bit of a framework base I would look at. And then you tie in what you're saying there with the European money and what can be got. It just adds into that element, I would say, of a competitive league. Like last year, where you don't know what could happen with the European spots up until maybe the last month of the season.
Well, to wrap up on this, David, before we move on to Evan Watch, have you realised what the common denominator here is in terms of money in the league?
Go on.
It's whether I'm in management or not. So Boom 1 finished. Boom 1 finished just before I came into management in the league. And I was the poor pauper operating with my fuel card only. And Boom 2 has kicked off just after I leave management in the league. So there you are. I'm just the common denominator there. Stuck in the middle, who managed to have the 15-year career in management in the exact 15 years that there was little to no money in the league. Well done me.
It's kind of like the butterfly effect, like the Keegan effect on the finances that can. But like I don't know, like just you're saying, but to wrap, like with that piece that I wrote on Friday and what we've just been chatting about there, like I would be of the opinion that what's happening in some instances is healthy. Do you know what I mean? I would think, like, listen, we know there's situations happening even with the fan ownership, and we've seen it now obviously with Cove, where that's obviously we spoke about that last week and confirmed, and the multi-club, and there's been issues there. But I would be up to him because of and again because of what I wrote a couple of weeks ago with the fan aspect of it, because that is so kind of healthy at the moment. That's kind of gives it another element, a different dimension, I think.
I suppose the only little question mark I'd still have is, does more money being in the league mean we have a better quality product? Or does it just mean the same standard of players getting, like, nobody has a problem. Nobody has a problem with a very good player earning very good money.
No.
I think the issue is average players earning very good money can grate a little bit.
But that's but I would say average players, you need average, and like let's be honest, like, the minimum wage in the league, as we said, it's only just risen there now to 450 euro from next season. Is going to be like the average wage week is 890 before tax. Like if that's the average, like I'm saying, like, you still need these players, and you still need to be able to earn a living as a player.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean?
No.
Do you know what I mean?
Listen,
Like, and I think that 50 grand thing, that 50
yeah.
grand, like if that's what kind of stays in and around that kind of number for the next little while, and then depending on how much there is growth, I don't think it's still like, it's not quite getting away where it's like, these fellas are earning like fortunes that are well beyond the means. As I say, in the grand scheme of where it compares to even say top level Scotland or mid, like it's still.
Nah, look, like I suppose the way I was trying to phrase it there, and phrased it poorly, is top end players earning top end wages, brilliant.
Yeah.
Middle tier players finally getting a decent middle tier wage. Again, absolutely fully deserved. I suppose it's the fear that in an arms race, or maybe bringing in a player from outside the country that you're gambling on, that the middle tier players who end up earning top tier wages. Listen, you're a Man United fan. You know all about middle tier players earning top tier wages. I hardly need to convince you.
I take a few middle tier players. Mike. But on this, right, and this is, so we see it now. So Shells have got in Jack Henry Francis. Obviously had a bit of experience in the league with Sligo Rovers last year, released by Arsenal. Very impressive. Had options in the UK. Partly maybe would be one of the reasons why that move. Because again, I had to bring it back to Damien Duff. I had to get a Damien Duff mention in here, but I kind of wrote about it on that week. It's a month ago. It's actually full on a month ago now. Actually, yeah, no, it's a month now since Damien Duff left. But in the week that he was on that week, because they actually beat Pats on the Monday, like Henry Francis was a player that they were after then, and that Duff was trying to get in. Do you know what I mean? So like this is something that's been in the works for at least a month. So they've gotten him in the door. He's a really good player.
Yeah.
I think he could be a really good player. But we've also still got this week, and we've just seen it confirmed yesterday by Galway United, where they've lost Moses Dwyer. He's gone. That move to Cambodia has now gone through. And again, kind of, we had the story about it going back maybe a month at this stage, because he kind of left after he got sent off, didn't he, against Sligo Rovers. But like, we're still at the stage where clubs, and this is the other element too, I know this is kind of dragging on the kind of, but it's just the other side of it. We're talking about the kind of the top level clubs who are challenging for Europe. But then you have a Galway United who would have had been outsiders for definitely for Europe this year, but wanting to push for it, they struggled. But they can only get a player like Moses Dwyer because they have that release clause, which I understand it to be around 40 grand. And it's in or around that figure. You kind of hear in contrasting figures, because like maybe other clubs in the league would have been told, listen, he's available for X, Y, and Z. You're hearing stuff between 20 and 30 grand. But you're still in that situation where you're losing the top scorer in the league for 30 grand. So like, it's not as if everything's like, whoosh, right, everything's changed overnight and all is here. It's not quite like that at all, I don't think.
No, I agree. Like it's a step in the right direction, but we're definitely not gone to ridiculously inflated wages or anything like that by a long stretch.